Morning.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening. The stereophonic "this meeting is being recorded" always tells us that it's time for another episode of Forward Maryland. I'm Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Steve Hunt. Happy May, everybody. We're getting to it.
Happy day after May Day.
Yep.
And this evening, it is our distinct honor. We'll skip the banner and go to our esteemed guest, who is the 33rd Comptroller of the state of Maryland, the Honorable Peter Franchot. Peter, welcome this evening. A two-time guest of the podcast. We're always pleased to have you join us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I haven't, I'm looking forward to the questions. And Steve, welcome to the show. When I see you, I'm going to give you one of my much coveted comptroller medallions for putting up with Bill.
I was about to say, I need a medallion. I haven't gotten a medallion yet.
Well, that is unusual because certainly you deserve one for your long labors in the, for the Democratic Party, but more importantly for the state of Maryland. And Bill, thank you for what you represent.
Well, thank you, sir. And so for those of you who may not know in viewer and listener land, Comptroller Franchot is running for governor of the state of Maryland. He is, of course, a Democratic candidate. And Peter, I will just get right into it. So for those of you who, for those out there who may not know who you are you and why are you running for governor?
Well, I think most people know me from my 35 years in elected office. Every single year I've spent managing the state budget, 20 years on the Appropriations Committee in the legislature, 16 years as comptroller. And, I get positive encouragement all over the state because I've run 4 times statewide, and people tug at my sleeve and say, you've been a great comptroller, you'd be a great governor. But since, everybody has some sense of who I am, I may just tell you one of my guiding lights is I've been married for this month, coming this month. And in fact, it's tomorrow. Thank God I'm even mentioning this. It's my 42nd wedding anniversary to Ann Marr. And wow. We have 2 wonderful adult kids, both of whom are married, both who are very successful, both of whose families have given us 3 grandchildren and hopefully some more. But that, Bill, is the accomplishment I'm proudest of in my life. I mean, yeah, I love being comptroller. I love being a muck-a-muck politician and all that. But when it all comes down to it, hey, my marriage and my family is what makes me proudest of all of the many professional accomplishments I've had. This personal accomplishment is something that's near and dear to me. So people may not know that. They may not know I served in the Army. They may not know that I come out of a public interest background, which is very important to understanding what kind of politician I am and what kind of governor I'm going to be. When you come out of the public interest movement, you've struggled on major issues of the day. And I worked on a lot of the environmental issues, but I also worked on the anti-nuclear power movement back in the 70s. People don't realize that those of us that are involved in these movements, we're just as frustrated by the Democrats as we are by the Republicans, because we're constantly knocking on the doors of powerful institutions, demanding that they change. So that explains, I think, a little bit why I'm such an independent Democrat. And I don't mean to belabor that point. It's not as if I'm some kind of maverick or gadfly or outsider. I am definitely got an outsider perspective, but I've got an insider bunch of skills. And I'll just speak briefly about what I've done in the 16 years as comptroller, because I'm quite proud of that. I've taken that kind of a back, it was a kind of sleepy agency, and with 1,150 employees, I've turned it into a juggernaut of customer service. It's something that is held up as a national example of good government and effective government and efficient government. And, we have in the agency the 3 R's, we call them: respect the taxpayer, respond to the taxpayer, get results for the taxpayer. It's all about results. We get billions of dollars of refunds back within 2.5 business days. We've almost eliminated fraud, which used to be a whole big problem. And we answer 800,000 phone calls very promptly. And you asked why I'm running for governor, because I have a safe seat. I could have stayed there forever, but I really felt like, geez, if I can step up and do what I've done for the comptroller's office, do it for the whole state of Maryland, that would be a pretty unbelievably exciting ride. So I am a happy warrior. I'm out there knocking on doors. All the polls show that this big, diverse, very, very incredibly impressive field that you're all interviewing all the time, they're terrific. But the fact of the matter is I've got a leg up on it, and I think I have something to offer people. And I'll just conclude with this. The proof is in the pudding. On March 10th, I reported a $7.5 billion surplus for the state of Maryland. Same meeting, I suggested we have a gas tax holiday, which has proven to be enormously popular. Our AAA bond rating is rock solid. Pension system, I'm chairman of the board of trustees of the pension system, well on its way to be completely funded. And then finally, I have a unilateral authority to set the tax date for Maryland. 3 years in a row, this is the third year, I've moved it from April 15th to July 15th. That has been taken advantage of, not by the people we owe money to, the refunds. The refund people, they file their taxes. We've already processed 2 million of them. But the folks that really need help, and each year it's about 600,000 small businesses and families that take advantage of this 3 months, basically, of an interest-free, penalty-free loan. And they wait till July 15th. I did it as a form of relief for Marylanders, but it turns out to have been something that really improved the tax revenues because it got businesses out of the winter into the summer season where they had some money. So I think the proof is in the pudding. I've done a good job. I have some very transformative ideas and suggestions that you guys can ask me about as far as what I would do as governor. But the main reason I'm running for governor is I think I've got something to offer.
Thank you for all of that, Peter. That's quite impressive. A wide and varied array of accomplishments. And also thank you for and congratulations to you and Ann on 42 years of wedded bliss tomorrow.
I have
Early
the
happy
black and blue
anniversary.
marks to prove it, Bill.
Because
I'm married to a strong woman, and I surround myself with strong women deliberately because that really makes me a better manager. I'll say that.
Well, so I want to ask a couple of political questions, and then Steve can take a couple questions on policy. But in terms of surrounding yourself with strong women, that was my next question. I think, a lot of people do know you, but I'm sure relatively few outside of Prince George's County know your running mate, Monique Anderson Walker. Tell us a little bit about her and what stood out for you when you selected her as your running mate.
Well, she's an outstanding public servant, and she served on the county council for one session, did a fabulous job, really stuck up for the taxpayers because she almost single-handedly blocked a property tax increase. And you know how onerous the property tax is locally, and particularly in Prince George's County, it literally forces seniors on fixed income to sell and move out. So she has that. She has a number of environmental successes under her belt. But the reason I picked her is that of all the candidates I interviewed, I could envision her as governor if something happened to me. She has that presence. She has that passion for public service. She has a wonderful family. And, her husband, Jay Walker, is a longtime delegate, but he's giving up his seat to help her in this campaign. And, her family is from Prince George's County, very, very well respected. She's a 5th generation HBCU graduate, mostly out of Howard. But, she's just the right person at the right time. And I couldn't be more pleased with her. And I think she's, scheduled to come up to Howard County for some events. I think people are going to really be attracted to her because, once again, very passionate, very strong, very forthright. We don't agree on everything. She's got some things that, are different perspectives. She's contributed greatly to our platforms, but she's the real deal. And I think people in Maryland are going to realize that we've done something significant here. She would be historically the first African-American female in the state's history to be lieutenant governor.
Mhm.
And she's fully capable of stepping in if, a bus runs over me.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen, but
Yeah.
maybe you get the lottery.
I'll raise a
You go
glass
to
to
some
that.
South Pacific island that you buy. That might happen. But let me ask you a little bit, because I know that as comptroller, you have crisscrossed this state countless times. My premise, and feel free to disagree with it, is that whereas Maryland enjoys its blue nature on the presidential election level and within the state legislature in terms of majorities, super majorities, on the gubernatorial level, it's considerably more purple. And we just have to look at the electoral results that support that premise, with last four governors being two of each party. Is that the way that you see it as well?
Well, I've always had a great deal of success running statewide. And I think I attribute it to the fact people see me particularly as the money guy and a fiscal person, but also as a straight shooter and honest. And I think they actually appreciate the fact that sometimes I push back, not just on Republicans, but on Democrats. And that comes once again out of my public interest perspective, which is I didn't come out of the Central Committee of Howard County. I didn't come out of the Democratic club system. I came out of the public interest movement where we were trying to do something idealistic and right for everybody. So I find that 90% of Democrats are folks that are very receptive to me. 5% are, so partisan and so extreme that, they don't want anything to do with my brand, which is, much more open, much more welcoming, and much less partisan. I think the problem with national politics, obviously, and to a great extent state politics, is that both parties are trying to dominate the other party. And I understand the Democratic Party. I understand the values and principles of our party, my party. And I'm very sympathetic to them, but I am not a robot. I do not like it when some party boss walks in and tells me I have to demonize someone like, let's just pick a person, Governor Hogan, where they come in and say, you've got to be much more partisan because you're a Democrat and he's a Republican. Hey, don't let the door hit you on the way out, because that's not me. And, I'm much more into, if you're a rational, functioning, mature, reasonable, rational person, I'm going to deal with you if we're talking about bettering the state of Maryland. And that resonates with 90% of the Democratic voters. And that's why I'm successful in primaries. It also resonates with 90% of unenrolled and also Republican voters. That's why I get hundreds of thousands of their votes. And I don't see that as, my party sees that as something they view skeptically. I don't. I think it's what the public wants. And so thank you for asking the question.
Oh, I appreciate it. And after Steve has a couple, I have my last question, which is about one of those achievements that you spoke of earlier, and about how that wound up being handled in a little bit longer term. But Steve, you've earned your combat pay by putting up with me and being so patient. 25% bonus for you, but go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you again for joining us, Mr. Comptroller, and congratulations on your anniversary. I am 2 days away from my 20th, I
Oh,
felt like I was really doing something special, but now I feel like a total slacker. So thank you for the perspective and for something to look forward to someday when I grow up. So congratulations, sir. Um,
congrats to you and best wishes.
thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So my first question, and you mentioned it earlier, was the gas tax holiday. And I know that I don't know if you were the first person to put that out there, but certainly you were one of the more vocal people about having that happen and making that happen. And as you said, very well received for the 30-day period that ended, I believe, in mid-April. I know there was a debate within the state legislature to extend that further. That did not go through. And I know there was a mad rush towards midnight of the last day for people to take advantage of that much lower price. So talk to me in a little more detail in terms of why you felt that was important and your feelings towards the state legislature not being able to extend it to, I believe you were and others were looking for 90 days on that.
Yeah, no, I mentioned on March 10th, we had the Board of Revenue Estimates that I chair come out and report this unbelievably historically large $7.5 billion surplus. And I said almost in passing, I said, wouldn't it be great if we had a 3-month gas tax holiday? And a couple hours after the meeting, Steve, Governor Hogan put a statement out saying he thought that was just terrific. And a couple hours later, the legislative leaders said they were for it. However, they ended up not doing 90 days, they ended up doing 30 days. And I don't really know the explanation of why they didn't extend it from 30 days to 90 days. This is something that was completely affordable. We had priced it out. It's $250 million for 3 months. That would have been paid out of the surplus to the state's transportation fund, because that's how we have a lot of our projects funded. It was short term, 3 months. It was limited. We knew would have a multiplier effect because tens of thousands of motorists from other states would come into Maryland to get the cheap gas. And we're talking 36 cents per gallon less. The skeptics said that the 2,300 gas stations in the state that I regulate in the comptroller's office would just pocket it and wouldn't pass it along to the consumer, because I couldn't order them to drop the price. All I could say was, please take the tax off, and then you have to cross your fingers a little bit. Well, long story short, they absolutely performed just like they should have as good Maryland citizens. They dropped the price of gas. And we were the first state in the country to do that, Steve. But then we were the first state to lift it. And I have been shocked. It cost me $60 or $70 to fill up my car today. And it was basically a request during the tense, agitated times of COVID and economic recovery from it, say thank you to the vast number of people that drive cars in Maryland. And for some reason, they couldn't see their way through to making it 90 days. I attribute part of it, and I may be completely wrong here, but I attribute part of it to their hostility to Governor Hogan in general, as far as that thing that I mentioned about the partisan competition where everybody's trying to dominate the other person. Well, so that was part of it, and maybe some of it was directed against me, but it was a great idea. It had a tremendous impact on the state's economy. And as I said, it had a multiplier effect because these out-of-state drivers would come in, fill their car up with cheap gas, and then buy things. So instead of losing 250 million, we were probably on our way to mitigate almost all of that. I say this because as governor, I'm going to employ this. I've already done it as comptroller in other areas. We have a back to school sales tax forgiveness for back to school clothing. And that's a huge help during the dog days of August, stimulating the economy. In February, we have the President's Day weekend where the sales tax on appliances that are energy efficient is forgiven. And, let me just give one example. That 3-day holiday where we give a tax break on energy efficient appliances, We lose about $800,000 in sales tax revenue. Guess what? We make $1 million in consumers out there shopping. Same thing with the back to school week and holiday. In other words, we have a consumer driven economy. It's a rich state in the richest country in the world. We have about a $444 billion GDP. I want to double that as governor. And in order to do that, you have to do some creative things like this, where you make people happy, you give them something to do. You're in effect giving them an incentive to go out and shop and take advantage of something. So that's, as long as these things are limited and concrete and supported by some data, I'm fine with them. What I'm not in favor of is unfunded tax cuts, for example, where, I went through the Thornton experience. That created a chaotic situation because the funding was never attached to the mandate. Kerwin is a little bit like that. I support the blueprint for the future. I'm going to implement it to the best of our ability, but it also is not funded. It's funded by things like the digital tax, which is going to be litigated till the cows come home. All I'm saying is that the gas tax holiday was just a missed opportunity for the state. If we'd continued it, it would have continued into June, and people would have felt as if they're valued and really appreciated by the state of Maryland, instead of getting kind of the bum's rush.
No, thank you for that. And it's interesting. And just as a quick follow-up, Maryland and a lot of it is through some very successful, we'd have to admit, marketing by our friends across Potomac. Maryland's got this reputation as a big tax state. They just when in doubt, we just tax the heck out of people. And you just rattled off some areas where we give breaks and relief to our citizens. And oh, by the way, Virginia was unable to even put in a 30-day gas tax holiday. So it's just interesting that that story is not told more, that Maryland's just not walking around slapping taxes on people every chance they get. And so it's interesting that you talk about all of those. And with a parent of kids in school, we do put back to school shopping. We schedule it around that 1 week, which is awesome.
How old are your kids?
One in middle school, one in high school.
Good for you. Yep.
So,
boy, girl, or both?
One of each.
Good for you. And I've often thought about the Kerwin plan because I continue to be concerned about the lack of long-term funding. So we pass these mandates, they sound terrific, everybody gets excited, and then they don't particularly have the results that everybody expected. That's my opinion of Thornton, frankly. And but I am interested in what Howard County's doing in the schools. I'm interested in reforming the curriculum. I'm interested in giving some relief, and it might not be something that's even that's separate from their compensation. The teachers, I want to give them something that values and appreciates them. And I'm thinking of, we're kind of formulating, feeling our way through this, but one thing we're quite serious about is reducing standardized tests by 90%. I mean, keep something there to get the federal funding. But I think these tests have become not formative, where these tests help teachers educate better and help them know their students better. I think they've become judgmental, where if you have some 1s or 2s or 3s in your classroom scoring on these standardized tests, you don't get promoted. You don't get, it affects your career. Let me put it that way, Steve. So I'm interested in what you're hearing from rank and file teachers, and I'm extremely interested in changing the curriculum in a way where every kid coming out of 12th grade has some skill and some knowledge about the modern economy, and most of all, the self-confidence that he or she knows what the stock market is, what a budget is, what compound interest is, that they can actually succeed. They don't have to see themselves as geez, I don't know, maybe I'm not good enough. Yeah, you are good enough. And right now, I'm not sure the system, I think it's more of an individual competitive dog eat dog environment. And I'm interested in anybody's thoughts about how to make it more collaborative, cooperative, real financially based education.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And I was actually going to ask you a question about Kerwin and the where we go with the blueprint implementation as you said, an appropriator, because obviously it costs money. And while we're doing very well in Maryland, we still have to be mindful of the budget, things of that nature. So no, I appreciate that answer on that, because it's important.
Yeah,
And
of
in
course
Howard
it
County, a
is.
lot of it's about the funding formula, teacher salaries, probably things you're hearing in other counties. We're all, I'm sure, all trying to, every county's trying to get theirs as best they can.
Here's another thing I'm thinking of doing, because the teachers, we tell them they're great. And when we tell them they're indispensable, we really don't do anything for them like we do for doctors and lawyers,
Mhm.
business owners and stuff like that. So we own the state airport, BWI. It's unusual. Usually it's someone like Baltimore City, a municipality owns it, like Atlanta or New York City owns LaGuardia. We own it. The state of Maryland owns it. And I always notice when I'm flying out of there, they let certain groups of people, like I'm a veteran, and they, I don't take advantage of this, but I know they let veterans get on first. They say the flight is ready to be boarded. Would all the people that are in the services please board first so we can recognize them and applaud them? How about if we switched it around and had the teachers? Teachers, could you board first? Because you're doing something incredibly important, but you aren't quite fully valued and appreciated by the state. And so, do something like that. Anyway, I'm wandering away. So, Bill, whatever, or Steve, whatever questions you have, I'll try to be a little.
Well, I have one more question, Peter, and you took from me my last question, which was going to be more tax holidays, because I'm one who feels that we could do stuff like that all year round. I mean, April for Home Depot runs, building supplies and such. We could come up with ideas, but on a
Exactly.
more
How about a craft beer?
Hey, now.
Also something near and dear to everyone's heart. But I want to end on a little bit of a serious note. Baltimore City. No need to restate. Last weekend, 10 shootings in Baltimore City, 5 of them fatal. Baltimore remains a vital economic hub, but not to belabor the point, we all know the city has problems. What would be your vision of what the state's role would be as governor of how to best support the city and get it moving in the right direction?
Well, I say all over the state that this issue of public safety is critical to the state's future. And it's not just Baltimore City, it's other areas down in Montgomery and Prince George's where there's an epidemic of carjackings, largely by younger people, by juveniles, which is very, very troubling. I think the right approach is to just say to the citizens of the state, look, number one, no public safety, no economy. Number two, that we need to have zero tolerance for police misconduct. I was in the Army. I consider myself a professional. I'm appalled that anybody who's in law enforcement would act unprofessionally. But I also think as a Democrat, we need, at least this Democrat, because I've said it hundreds of times, I have zero tolerance for crime, particularly for violent crime where people want to hurt another person or some kind of hate crime. And I think with Governor Hogan, speaking of him as I did earlier, I find him to be a rational, functioning adult. And I think that what he did recently up in Baltimore actually made some sense. He took the U.S. Marshals and the state police, these are 2 elite law enforcement agencies, and ordered them up to Baltimore to arrest these repeat violent offenders who had open arrest warrants. And they did a couple of hundred of them, and then it kind of petered out. Nobody really guess they didn't follow up on it, but many of them were released. I could see doing something like that on a sustainable, regular basis, using these elite law enforcement who are well trained to take the repeat violent offenders who have open arrest warrants off the streets. I think that makes a lot of sense. It could be applied to the other hotspots around the state to the extent that makes sense. I think it's got to be combined with a major commitment to community policing. Many more women recruited into law enforcement, and filtering out the folks in law enforcement now who shouldn't be there. But community policing is, I think something that would be welcomed by almost every neighborhood in the state, rural or urban. So I think those two things could be done fairly quickly, and you could see a calming effect from that I think would be better. Good, but it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be month after month after month after month for a while. It can't just be a one-off thing. And I'll just finish by saying the key, and I thought that was brilliant what you just said about having some other tax holidays. The key to a tax holiday is that it's limited. So you're not kind of robbing the treasury. You're basically mixing it in with some other multiplier effects. So you actually don't even lose that much money, but it can't be somebody's dream that we get rid of the gas tax forever. No, that's not practical. But short term, it is something that I know works because I've overseen it for a number of years.
Yeah, first week of April, let people go to Lowe's and Home Depot and stock up to do their home projects. And meanwhile, then they go to the supermarkets and movie theaters and the restaurants, all in those big box centers, and
the particular
more tax.
The sectors that have been particularly hammered. You're right. You put, the hospitality sector is something that's still struggling. So I can see that. I do commit to people that I'm not going to forget the people of Maryland on this gas tax holiday. I more or less promised them 90 days, and I'm going to give them the 60 days that they. When I get to be governor, because
that would be outstanding.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm sorry. Steve, do you have any other questions?
Well, just a quick follow-up question. I know we want to get the comptroller back on his schedule. So I know everybody's time is valuable because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here of the campaign. But you said something about crime and what you do in the area of criminal justice, and this is probably more of a political question than a policy question, because there are folks like yourself who are talking about a more balanced approach. It's, yes, reform how we do policing, but still be focused on making sure we're addressing the crime issues. You have the president out there who is, going across the country and talking about, it's not about defund the police. You fund them, but fund them to do their job, but do it properly. As Democrats, Bill and I both being Democrats, full disclosure, we have this reputation that's been put upon us, again, some shrewd marketing by Republican friends, including some who you may see in the fall if you win the nomination, but others about, we just want, lawless streets and, all bets are off. What can Democrats do, and maybe in Maryland under a new leader as governor, to change that narrative?
Well, I mentioned that 90% of Democrats and Republicans and independents, I think the message that I have resonates with them. And I think it's mainly just common sense. I mean, everybody knows that there's excess at the margins. So there's excessive, on the right, there's excess, on the left, there's excess. It's limited to about 5%, but they turn out to be very, very loud 5%. So I think having what I kind of offer to people is that I'm not running for another office after this. I'm not running for president of the United States. I'm going to finish my career as governor of the state of Maryland, and I'm going to do the right thing. And one of the right things is to combine, enough tough discipline with enough compassion that people say, yeah, that guy, he's getting it right. And, right now there's a lot of fear in the state, and it's fear of crime. It's also sometimes, unfortunately, in some neighborhoods, fear of the police. But we can deal with both of those. It's not rocket science, but we need to be sustainable. We need to put resources into it. We need to lead with, compassion, I guess is the best way to describe it. But we have to be serious, because otherwise we're not going to enjoy the prosperity that ultimately is the magic word here, Steve. I mean, ultimately, we need hundreds of thousands of people that right now are kind of all by themselves out there, and they're not doing very well, and they're drifting into misconduct. You need a job that pays a family supporting salary. You need health care. You need a pension. You need to be part of something. And, when we advocate 100,000 new jobs, we're advocating a partnership with trade unions, among other things, because that's part of it. It's like being part of a soccer team. It's part of a team effort. You've got some support. And right now, so many people are just completely on their own, and capitalism does not deal well with individuals, because capitalism can be very cold. I support the free enterprise system because it's better than any other system, but it has flaws. One of the flaws is, if you're not part of the program, you can lead a pretty miserable life. And I want to see everybody on the path to the middle class. I want to see them with the good jobs that they deserve, the health care and the pension, but they also need home ownership. And that's going to be a difficult problem, because the inventory right now is not particularly there for workforce housing. Well, we're going to change that, and we're going to lubricate it with money from the state. We're going to lubricate it with regulations and having everybody at the table. We're not going to allow out-of-state developers to come in and just loot the treasury. We're going to rely upon developers who have good reputations, and we're going to deal with this shortage of workforce housing, I call it. But I want it to be ownership. I don't want it to be endless rent payments, and at the end of the day, you just have nothing to pass on. No equity, no ownership, no wealth. And I think the state is ready for this. I know that I'm able to manage it because I've dealt with the budget for 35 years. And we'll see. We'll see how it all turns out. Politics is it's a blood sport. What can I say?
Thank you.
It's not beanbag, put it that way.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that answer. Because I was actually going to ask you about the plan you put out really for communities of color. You call it your level playing field, but I think you've touched on so much of that with criminal justice, with what you talked about with Baltimore, and now with housing. You talk about equity and passing that on. That is such a big issue. I know most communities of color. So thank you for that answer and for your big plan.
Since you brought that up, Darrell Barnes, the chairman of the Black Caucus in Annapolis, we have the largest Black Caucus of any state in the country. He's endorsed me. And I think part of the reason he did is that 6 months ago, he put out a request to all the gubernatorial candidates to do a Black agenda. Well, we actually did a Black agenda, and it's a damn good one. But apparently nobody else did. They just, said I don't know what they said, but they didn't do what we did, which is put out a level playing field for economic justice. And we're going to absolutely do that. We're good to our, one thing I'm good at is surrounding myself with excellent people who are going to demand that we do the right thing. And on the issue that you brought up, it's women, it's minority, it's all of the folks that have been left out of the economy. The reason I feel very confident, Stephen, is that I have scrutinized 20,000 contracts at the Board of Public Works over the last 16 years. That gives me an enormous perspective and experience dealing with how the state spends its money. And frankly, not to associate myself with the person who originally used this term, the system it's not a level playing field. It's a little bit rigged against new entrants. I call it the incumbent vendor protection program, our procurement system. And we need to change that. And we can change it without a lot of food fighting and throwing it. Just put someone like me in charge who's aware of what needs to be done in order to significantly and immediately transform something that's not particularly appropriate.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for putting out the plan. I personally could have done an entire podcast on just that plan because you touch on so many issues. But I would encourage the readers to go out to your website and read it. And there's a lot to chew on and a lot of good stuff. But I will, Bill, I guess you now get your medal for me digging deep into policy with the comptroller. I will turn it back over to you, sir.
Ever the wonk you are. So,
Well,
Comptroller Franchot, Peter, we are at the end of our
Thank
fine
you.
podcast production. And so once again, I'd like to thank you for being a marvelous guest. For people, I mean, we give everybody this opportunity for a shameless plug of how people can get in touch with the campaign. So my last request of you is, if you could give that plug, please, sir.
Well, I have a fantastic campaign team. I'm very proud of my marriage, as I said at the beginning of this. I'm very proud of my campaign team because they're diverse, they're young, they're just tremendously effective and competent. And anybody can contact any of them at franchot.com. That's my last name.com. Or they can call me on my cell phone, 301-332-1961. Feel free to put that up, Bill, if people want to be in touch with me as comptroller, or I'm just keeping the same number as governor. But the campaign, I will emphasize to everybody, is all about door knocking. We're all about phone contact. We're all about direct contact. We are not taking this thing lightly at all. We are not running a general election where we have a bunch of glitzy TV ads. No, we're going right to the Democratic voters, knocking on their door, giving them a call on their cell phone, making personal contacts. And that field operation is exactly what you need in a primary, particularly one like this that's being held, unfortunately, July 19th. I think early mail-in is like 3 weeks before that or so. So it's we're quietly confident. We would love to have everyone join us, or anyone who has an interest in a given issue. Just communicate with us via email, or you can text me or voicemail me. Once you're in my contact list, I'll answer the phone.
Thank you, Comptroller Franchot. And since everybody else had an anniversary, the primary day is 2 days after my birthday. So only 76 more days to go till I turn 55. So
that's a sign. That's a good luck sign. I think that augurs well for me.
Peter, again, it's been a pleasure. Steve, yes, always a pleasure. And those of you out there in viewer and listener land, join us on Saturday when our guest will be Monica Biddix. She is the principal of Workhorse Strategies, a political consulting firm. And we will be talking about Democratic politics comparatively in Iowa, North Carolina, and the state of Maryland, and also nationwide, especially as it pertains to rural voters and trends going on there in the voting public. So until then, we wish you a good week, and we'll see you on our next edition of Forward Maryland. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.